So this is Passiv Talks. It's our first live stream. We're super excited to have Bryce and Kristy from Millennial Revolution as our first guests in Passiv Talks. Yeah. So I guess I'll just do a quick little introduction. Hello, everyone, Millennial Revolution fans, Passiv fans. If you are new to either, thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited to be doing this. I'm so excited that you've tuned in. My name is Reese. I'm a team member here at Passiv. I'm thrilled to be joined by Bryce and Kristy, a pair of extremely popular bloggers on the FIRE lifestyle, financial independence, retire early. Their blog, Millennial Revolution, has been viewed more than 3.3 million times. They are published authors of Quit Like a Millionaire, No Gimmicks, Luck, or Trust Fund Required. And they have an exhausting catalog of educational blog content, such as why people lose money in the stock market, how to build a portfolio, asset allocation, slicing the pie, rebalancing, how to buy low and sell high, and much, much more. They also offer Millennial Revolution Investment Workshop, a step-by-step guide to investing that helps teach others how to invest, and so much more than that. Reading that off, it kind of makes me wonder, are you too sure you're actually retired?
I think we need to basically take a vacation from retiring.
There have been moments where we've actually realized that we were actually now busier in retirement than before, and because when we were working, we had weekends, and then now when we're in like heavy book promotion mode, it got a little hectic.
Yeah, no doubt. So I have to ask the first thing, because part of the FIRE lifestyle, at least for you two, is that financial independence allows you to be really, really mobile. So where in the world are you right now?
So we're currently in Da Nang, Vietnam. It's early in the morning, and it's this beachside town. So we're like about 5 minutes walk from the beach. And we've been eating all the things because we missed out during the pandemic. So got to make up for lost time.
It's like 25 degrees here, like every day. And apparently it's been a really, really, really unpleasant winter in Canada this season. And
way to rub it in. Yeah,
it's
for our Canadian
pretty good
viewers,
of our life choices right now. I gotta admit.
Yeah, for our Canadian viewers, you guys, come on, be nice, please.
One of the nice things about the FIRE movement is if you don't want to see a snowflake for like an entire year, you don't have to, and that's. Before we used to be like, we're going to embrace winter because we're Canadian and all this kind of stuff. And then now, and then after we started traveling for the first, when we first retired back in 2015, we're like, this is much better.
Yeah, it would be. You're like, what is that? Winter, folks who go south during the winter.
Yes.
Snowbirds?
Snowbirds. Yeah.
Snowbirds. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You're like snowbirds, but you're like 30.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So where have you been lately?
So prior to this, we were in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And we had like a big gathering of about 30 other FIRE people. So we met them at a financial retreat, and they call it like the flash mob, like the FIRE flash mob, in which we're like, hey, we're in Chiang Mai, like who wants to come join us? And then like a whole bunch of people would show up, and then we would like take them to this elephant sanctuary, and then we'd like go out to eat, and we'd like see like late night shows. So it's been quite the exact opposite of the pandemic experience. And we've been having a really great time.
So before that, it was Thailand. We were also in Bangkok earlier, and Singapore. And after this, we're planning on heading up Australia and New Zealand, which is two very remote places in the world where we had never been to. And
we were so close to it. We were like 2.5 hours in Bali from Australia when the pandemic hit, and then we had to go all the way back to Canada.
It was like February 2020. We had a ticket to Australia. We were like, we're finally going to go, and then everything blew up, as you're all aware.
Well, I mean, we were talking about before this how the FIRE lifestyle has these ebbs and flows. People believe in it, and then people are excited about it. And you said, we were talking offline, how you were kind of worried, like, is the FIRE thing going to continue when COVID hit, right? Like, are people going to get scared by that, or are they going to kind of get into their bunkers? But you feel like it's kind of been really positive.
It like attention, like there has been, whenever there's a market downturn, like what's happening right now and what was happening earlier in 2022, and obviously during the pandemic, there's always this commentary that is fire dead, does it not really work anymore? And I've heard this argument like basically continuously up and down for like years. And every time the media gets into this narrative of, well, fire's dead, that's not going to work anymore. I guess these annoying millennials are going to have to go back home and settle down and live in a house and then buy a house. But it always comes back. And the reason is people really don't like their jobs. Like that's the.
I don't think it's whether you like it or not. Sometimes you just don't have a choice.
Sometimes
like every single sector was affected during the pandemic. It's not. Sometimes it's outside of your control.
And it's not so much even that people dislike their jobs; it's that people's jobs change. And there was a brief period of time in which we thought that remote work was going to be like the new normal across all industries and this kind of stuff. Yeah. And then now we're seeing that people are the job market is becoming more unstable. People are getting laid off again, and it's getting harder to find jobs. That companies are now kind of seizing their moment and forcing people back to work, back into the office. Mark Zuckerberg just released this open letter to his employees saying, like, if you don't want to get laid off, you need to come back to the office so that we know who you are, kind of thing. Because so it's so market conditions change, jobs change, and obviously the economy changes. Just like a few weeks ago, everyone thought there's going to be no recession, and then now we have some bank failures that just happened in the U.S. and the stock market took a nosedive, and now everyone's panicking again. So it really just comes in cycles, but throughout it all, fire has continued to work for us. No matter how many scary things have happened in the stock market, if you depend on your job, you are. When those things happen, it's very, very scary because those people know that if the job goes away through no fault of their own, they're going to be in big trouble. But fire keeps burning because it doesn't require a job in order for you to finance your lifestyle.
Right. Well, so I'll just quickly, for anyone who wasn't here at the very start, this is Passiv Talks. Bryce and Kristy are joining us from Millennial Revolution. Feel free. I'm seeing lots of comments in the chat, which is so great. Feel free to ask questions throughout, and we will try to answer a few. But there will be time for a Q&A around the 30-minute mark. So if we don't get to your question during the chat, feel free to ask again, and we will try to address it during the Q&A. So with that said, I guess we'll just continue to discuss here now. What we're doing today is kind of, we wanted to talk about fire. We wanted to talk about the Millennial Revolution, how that all started. We want to talk about your approach to investing, and then how passive, makes it easier for you to live your lives. So my question is your story. Like, did you always want to retire at 30, or what was it that kind of like was that tipping point that made you say, like, we want to do this? And then my second question, the follow-up to that would be, it's kind of a process. So like, what was the very first thing you did when you made that decision to set it in motion?
Oh yeah. Like retiring in my 30s was never in my radar. So I was born in China. And at one point, like my family was so poor, we were trying to live on 44 cents a day. So from going from that to becoming a millionaire and retiring, like that's just a fantasy that I never even considered. We were driving very hard towards like the traditional blueprint of life, which is like, get the degree, get the job, work until you're 65, because apparently there's a lot of jobs in which you can work until you're 65, retire with a pension that's like rarer than unicorns now. And then, buy a house and then just be like everyone else. That did not go according to plan, because we lived in Toronto at the time and houses were $1 million. So completely unaffordable. And not only that, my job was actually getting more and more unstable because there were all these whispers of like outsourcing and all that stuff. Like there were engineers that were competing with us who were working in India for $5 an hour. So kind of hard to compete with that, right? And the thing is, that was before this Chat GPT came on board. That's even making the outsourced, like the engineers in other countries, terrified that they're going to lose their jobs, right? So that back then it was already unstable. Now it's even more unstable. So back then I was worried that if we had gone into a mortgage like everyone else, like what if I don't even know if I'm going to have a job in the next year, never mind paying off my mortgage for the next 20 years. So at that point we were thinking, is there anything else we can do other than just follow the blueprint like everyone else? And then we started reading financial independence blogs. Back then, it wasn't really a community. It wasn't so much a FIRE community. It was kind of like a handful, maybe like, a couple of bloggers talking about it in the United States. And I thought back then that I didn't think it was international at all. I was thinking, is this just something that Americans can do? Can Canadians even do this? So it was a light bulb moment when I discovered financial independence blogs, but I still had that fear that, okay, maybe this is only for Americans. Maybe it's not going to work out because, if I fail, I can't just run back to my parents. They're going to save me. I have to be able to take care of myself. But yeah, so when we started going to it was basically out of necessity. That's like, I may not have a job in the next year. I don't know what's going to happen in this field. So we started saving money. We started investing it. That was also terrifying, by the way, because coming from that background of living on 44 cents a day, it's like you're clinging to every dollar, like it's like a life raft, and being able to put that
so putting it somewhere else is
that was terrifying. That was one of the most terrifying experiences. And when we started investing in 2008, also that's learning how to invest like that is the worst that you will ever get. Like coming back from that. I realize now whenever there's market dips, like recently with the bank failures, I'm like, we've been through it. Yeah, we know it's going to recover. So
jumping
from that,
in and learning when the world changes completely is
exactly. That was one of the toughest lessons to have to learn, to investing in 2008 and holding on for dear life. And then I thought at the time that, maybe it'll take us 5 or 10 years to get to the $1 million that we needed in order to retire. But actually once we discovered financial independence and we started driving hard towards it, it actually only took us about 3 years to get to the level that we needed to get to. And then there was still an identity crisis that happened after I quit my job. Because at the time I was thinking, when I quit my job, I'm going to be running out the door and tap dancing and giving my boss the finger. No, I didn't do that. I was having a major panic attack. I was like, this is a terrible idea. What's going to happen? I've been doing this job for almost 10 years. Who am I now? What do I do with my life? This is terrifying. But that was back in 2015, and it's been 8 years now, and it's the life that I never thought would be possible. I still wake up every single day just in complete disbelief that this is my life.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's the dream for anyone, right? Is to wake up every day and just be happy and feeling liberated and feeling free to do what you want. And for some people, they love their jobs, and that's that sense of freedom. They get to go and to their everyday job and feel fulfilled. And the FIRE lifestyle is for you that kind of feeling of fulfillment.
Yeah, I think it's all about the choice. Your job only gets better when you are financially independent, because it's not like you are forced to do that job. You are choosing to do that job. And jobs always change. You never know. My job got really bad over the last 9 years that I worked there. But in the beginning, it was great, right? So you never know. Anything can change at the drop of a hat, and you have no control over any of that. So becoming financial independent gives you the options, as many options as you possibly could, so that even if you love your job, even if it changes, if you don't love your job, all of that, it'll work out regardless.
Right. So then where in there did the Millennial Revolution idea start? When did you decide okay, now maybe we should blog this. Maybe we should start documenting this for other people.
Yeah, originally when we actually first retired, we mostly did volunteer work. We were volunteering for a nonprofit called We Need First Books, and we were their tech director. So we were trying to help them with their emailing. We were trying to help them with their newsletter. The whole idea of starting a blog about retirement and renting instead of owning didn't really it didn't even come into my radar until we went back home after the first year, and there was just so many people complaining about I can't afford to buy a house. This is the only way to live. I'm gonna kill myself. This is my dream. If I don't have a house, then what's the point of living? Right. And I'm I can't deal with this anymore. I need to figure out a way to put the message out there that this is not the only way. And especially from my pressure from my own parents, that was the biggest pressure of all. From family, that's if you don't have a house, you have nothing. Like my mom was like,
Yeah.
oh, you're a millionaire? Well, so what? You don't have a house. Like that's literally what she said.
Interesting.
Right?
Wow.
Like,
she actually said that. That's amazing.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she said, so what? You don't have a house. So I was so fed up with that mentality that you have to live the traditional life. I mean, if you choose to, you willingly do that, that's fine. But if you're just going along the herd because that's the only lifestyle you have been taught and that's the only thing that you have ever considered, I just wanted to show that there was a different way. That's not the only path.
Okay. So then you started a blog and started documenting the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
And it was and it grew so explosively because it really touched on like a pain point and like an emotional nerve in the Canadian psyche. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but Canadians are some of the most real estate housing people obsessed people in the world. And and the last time that I went back to Toronto, that's like you're just in a cafe and you're just everyone around you just talking about just real estate listings and open houses and mortgage, like they're debating about interest rates and mortgages and this kind of stuff. And I'm like, it's an entire city and of people that are just that's all they care about, right? Yeah. And that was quite frustrating to me because I'm like, guys, there's more to the world than just owning a house in Toronto, and and you guys are in New Brunswick, so hopefully you understand that the work-life balance a little bit more than the Torontonians. But that's the kind of like I grew up in Toronto, so that's what I was surrounded by my entire life. If anything,
we can go fishing when we feel like it. We got a river right here. We can go fishing and snowshoeing and
The British Columbians. I spent some time in BC, and I'm just kind of like they have a much different attitude where they like their real estate market is just as crazy as Toronto, and in some ways, in some ways even worse. Yeah. But they're upset. They actually like live and like use the nature around them to their advantage kind of stuff rather than just sit at home and just complain about everything. And then I thought that was kind of like eye opening. I wanted to try to push back against that narrative, and immediately I pitched that story to CBC, and they immediately jumped on the piece because they were like, oh, these people got rich by not buying a house, which is of course the opposite of every single news article that you get out of Toronto.
It's very contrarian to the playbook that's established.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And the fact that we were Asian really kind of went against that grain even more, and it just kind of exploded from there. And we were in Japan, traveling in Japan when that story first hit, and our phone just lit up, and then and everyone was talking about it. And
all my coworkers were like, "You did what now? What?
Yeah."
You could have told me. I could have taken you out for coffee. What is this?
Like, we got more views than Justin Trudeau on his Canada Day address at the time. So I thought that was fun.
Wow, that's pretty sweet. Yeah. So you two are used to this like complete opposite side of the world interview process.
Yeah. There's people don't believe you when you just talk about it, but the reason why we're still traveling after all these years, except during the pandemic, of course, is because nothing really kind of quite drives that point home than actually living it. Yeah. Right. And and the fact that we, after all these years, we haven't been like, oh, we have to go back now, or thinking, okay, this traveling lifestyle is not all it's cracked up to be. If anything, it's gotten better over time, and I'm even more like. And our financial position got even safer because of that. Because as you might imagine, when you travel in Vietnam, it's a lot cheaper than living in high cost of living city like Toronto or Vancouver or something like that. So you actually save money by traveling. So
what would you say is a standard cost per day that you're spending in Canadian or American for?
Okay. Yeah. So this this 1-bedroom condo that we're staying in right now, which has a rooftop pool, and it has the best of Airbnb amenities and hotel because it has like laundry, it has kitchen, and it has daily house cleaning. And the cost in Canadian dollars is $17 a day.
Holy cow. That's pretty good.
So and so I think so easily you could for 2 people in Vietnam, you could live on 30,000 Canadian a year or less. Easily, like that would afford you massages every other day, the ability to never have to cook or clean or do anything. I'm a total lazy slob now. I don't do anything. I haven't cleaned. I've only done the laundry. I've been getting massages every other day, and every single meal. Like, I don't know how to turn on the stove. I don't know what's going to happen when I go back to Canada in the summertime. And I'm like, what is this thing? Like, how do I use this?
Yeah, we've been eating out every day, and every meal is like $1.50.
Yep.
Wow.
With a beer.
And I'm sure delicious too, right? Like,
yeah. You know, Vietnamese food that you get in Canada is actually just a very, very small slice of what you can actually, of what is actually gets exported, because, you know, just like every other culture's food, it's the actual kind of stuff that they make is much more varied throughout the entire country. What we get in Toronto is like Southern Vietnamese food, but here we're in Geelong, which is kind of in the middle of the country. So we're getting kind of like, we're trying all these new things that we had never experienced before, and I gotta say it's pretty awesome.
Wow, great. Again, just popping in there to let everybody know who may have just signed on. I see lots of questions in the comments, which is awesome. We're going to do a Q&A in about 10 minutes where we'll address some of these questions. So please hold on to them and ask them again once we're doing the Q&A, and we'll try to get through all of those. I wanted to ask you, so it's being able to do the fire retire is awesome. Like, you build up a certain amount, and then you work out how much you're going to need per year, but you have to maintain that, right? So how do you stay on track? Like, what do you do to really keep yourself on that path?
Yeah, actually, passive is very, very helpful for that. Because one of the things that people like, okay, so there's two different mindsets. Like, when you're in accumulation mode versus when you're in spend down mode, when you're in retirement mode, it's actually quite different. So when you're in accumulation mode, you just want, like, you can afford to take more risk because you're working and you're trying to grow your portfolio as quickly as possible. But you kind of have to switch your mindset once you're in retirement mode, because you're not in accumulation mode anymore, and you actually need everything to be steady. So it's not like about like maximizing, like you don't try to maximize the capital gain as much as you did before. You're more like, you are more geared towards safety and not running out of money and having to go back to work. So that's where dividends comes in very, very handy. And one of the things we love about passive is how easy it is to track dividends, which is extremely important. And we're at the point where, because we have been retired for 8 years now, the dividends have grown over time to the point where it is equivalent to or more than our yearly cost of living. So right now our dividends are between 50 to 60,000 a year, and we can easily live on 40,000 a year, 40 to 50,000.
Amazing.
So yeah, so being able to see that just with like going to passive, just looking at the report and being able to track that is one of the most important things that you can do in retirement, because you want to make sure that you don't panic sell, especially during a market downturn, because you're going to go through a lot of those. Like, fire is not a magical bullet that's like the stock market's always going to go up. You're always going to make money. That's not what fire is about. It's about consistently doing something. It's not that difficult, but consistency is the key. And to be able to have that steady income and not freak out when there's market downturns. So that is one of the things that is key.
Yeah, being able to see your dividends keep coming in, even though there's like periods of extreme market volatility, like right now, actually. Really gives you that peace of mind. And you know what? I really kind of appreciate a lot more the power of like good visualization, because people make decisions emotionally, right? I mean, like when things are scary, because I remember during 2008 there was a period of time in which I had the order put in to sell everything that I had, and which at the time was put in TD mutual funds, and I had my finger over the sell out button. I was like, I know I shouldn't, but I really want to. And being able to quickly be able to pull out that data is really helpful, because back before passive, I started using passive like regularly. I would have to like do a bunch of like custom like pulling information out as like a CSV file and then shoving it into Excel and then making charts and like this kind of stuff like that. And like that's a natural thing for me to do. But if you're, because we were both engineers and that's what we kind of did for a living. But even then, it would take some time to do that. And if you weren't familiar with that and it's not something that's natural to you, you may not have been able to do that, and it may have caused you to do something rash, right? I mean,
just building equations and cells and all the interlinking relationships. I mean, it takes time to do that stuff.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of our family members to use Passiv, and some of them are like very, investment illiterate, and they weren't interested in what we were doing for the longest time. Like that's the interesting thing. Like we have a lot of people all over the world that we have never met. That's like, oh my God, it's you guys. Can you teach me how to invest? And our own family is like, oh, you don't know shit. Like like we don't care. Like whatever you're doing, I don't want to.
Networks don't allow swearing on this live.
And then so the fact that we were able to introduce them to Passiv has helped a lot because they don't actually have time to do. Like, pull up all the Excel cells. They don't have time for pivot charts. Like they've got 2 kids. Like they love the fact that they can just have this really easy to use interface and it will actually help them invest. So good job, guys.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Yeah. The dividend reporting is a huge feature. People love that. It allows them to really get a quick overview of their dividends and where they're coming from. And the notification system in Passiv is great too, because it allows people to know like when those are instantly in their cash accounts and such. So now some people I see are chatting and asking more like specific investing questions. Like one question I have is there one investment that you've made, maybe, I don't know, an ETF you've bought or something where like you just love it. You just think about that all the time. Like, remember when we had that did so well for us or is doing so well for us?
I wouldn't say there's a specific ETF that we go nuts over. It's the idea of index investing. I think index investing in general, because I come from a very, very fear-based background, especially with someone who grew up in poverty and was not very familiar with investing in the very beginning. The fact that we are able to withstand so many market downturns, 2008, then 2015, that oil and the oil crisis with Canadian stocks. Then 2018 with the government shutdown, then 2020 March pandemic, and now with the bank failures. It's just giving you like buying into index funds and having that peace of mind that your portfolio will not go to zero. That is the thing that helps us sleep at night. And every single one of those downturns, people have said, oh yeah, well now Fire is going to fail. And now you're going to have to like go crawling back to your boss and get your job back. That's never happened. And that one of the reasons is because of the beauty of index investing and that you don't have to worry about your portfolio going to zero.
Right. Yeah. So what are some things that you like tactically that you like to do with your investments? I know on your blog, I was reading one thing you were talking about, HISA hopping, high interest saving accounts hopping was one thing, or tax loss harvesting. Like, are there anything like particular tactical things that you do or have done that have worked for you or still do and you would recommend?
Sure. I mean, like all that stuff like tax optimization, people get confused about that going and they go, oh, if I don't figure that out, then I feel bad or
what's the point?
Yeah. What's the point? We're natural kind of like optimizers where we're always kind of looking for that. Oh, we can squeeze a little bit more of like efficiency out of our portfolio or squeeze a little bit more dividends or a little bit more yield. But for the vast majority of people, you don't need to do that stuff, especially when you're in the accumulation mode. And the more complexity, in fact, that if you add to your investment, the less likely that people are going to do it. So I like to tell people, keep it simple. There's only 3 or 4 ETFs that you need to really care about, which is kind of like, a bond index, the Canadian index, the international index, and the US index. And how you actually arrange that in your accounts, even if you get it wrong, you can fix it later, and it's not a huge deal at all. But we do like to tweak stuff back and forth. But one thing that we definitely don't tweak on is kind of like the overall investment strategy. Like even if we'll steal a couple percentage from here, and then maybe we'll
change the allocation.
Now that we're more now that we are more now that we can live off of the dividends, we can afford to take a lot more of an aggressive allocation. Like right now, we are the equivalent of about a 90% equity, 10% fixed income type of portfolio.
Yeah. Okay.
And that makes a lot of sense for us because, again, we can just live off of the dividends and we really don't care about market volatility. But for somebody who is maybe a little bit closer to retirement or is more conservative, 60-40 is kind of like the benchmark that we have historically been recommending because that's kind of what most people are more comfortable with. And when in times like this where stock markets are plummeting because of these bank failures that are right now, that's a good time to have that kind of portfolio. Right now, our portfolio is dropping more than we normally would have had we still been in a 60-40 allocation. but we are specifically okay with that because no matter what happens, the dividends keep coming in steady, which we can see through the passive tool, of course. And as a result, we really don't care about market volatility. So we're kind of watching this this volatility right now, kind of like with a detached curiosity kind of thing. But we're not feeling that fear because our livelihood is not attached to that. It's because, again, we can live off of dividends, and we're living in a low cost area of living, which in this case is Vietnam. So yeah, I mean, like, there's all sorts of like stuff that you can do with that, but I like to tell people just like, don't worry about all the complexity and some of the stuff that we write about that is more relevant to us now, but just what we talk about in the investment workshop is just keep it simple and you're going to be fine.
Yeah. I like what you said there about, having the positions. You might not have to have them perfect at first because you can always kind of correct that as you go. But I think it's that step that is the toughest part, right? For people is to make that first. If you have to have like a leap of faith, but it really doesn't have to be like a leap of faith because you can correct those things quite quickly and without, like having a huge impact on you.
Yeah. And anybody that's right now stressing out about the market, like diving right now, if you're still working, if you're still putting money into the portfolio, this is a good time to invest, right? I kind of wish that I had some cash coming in handy that I could have like jumped in and put money into when bank stocks were down like 10% or whatever they were a couple of days ago. But that's the kind of environment that we started investing in. So when we started investing, it was like right before 2008, right? So you can kind of imagine how scary that was because back then, our portfolio got cut by like a third, or something like that in the course of a couple months. And what you're supposed to do in that situation, if you're still working, is we were continuously throwing money into the markets as it was going down. And that was a really, really uncomfortable thing to do because we would put in $1,000 from my paycheck. And then literally the next day, market values had eroded so much that my portfolio was back down $1,000. So it just felt like I was setting money on fire. But the nice thing about the index is that the index individual companies can die, like Silicon Valley Bank did, but the index can never die, right? Because it is a collection of all companies in a market weighted way. So when the index inevitably corrected, because we had done that, because we had put money, we had thrown money into the index all on the way down, when it eventually swung back up again, we were able to participate in the upside stronger than we participated in the downside because we bought more units on the cheap. And as a result, we recovered all of our money like a year or so later.
A little under 2 years.
A little under 2 years, even though it took until 2012 or so for the actual index to correct. We were able to get our money back out a lot earlier because we had continued to do that. So it's a simple thing to do, but it can be quite emotionally difficult. But that's kind of where you show your true mettle as an investor, because everybody can flood into investment when it's going up and then and run away when it's going down. It's the ones that flood into it even as it's going down. Those are the ones that make it.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Show their full mettle, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're about halfway through here, and I didn't want to. There's so much we could still talk about, but I want to make sure that we get to questions and stuff. So to transition from this discussion to the Q&A, we'll do a quick one-word response game. Okay. Now, full disclosure, everybody. Bryce and Kristy have no idea what I'm going to ask them, but they have to respond to each of these things. First thing that come to mind. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Favorite temperature in Fahrenheit or Celsius?
25.
Celsius.
25 Celsius.
Both of you, 25.
Ish, yeah. That's
kind of like the temperature right now.
Basically right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought maybe one of you would be like 24, one would be 25, but 25 the same. That's pretty. There you go. Okay. Coolest looking national currency.
Oh.
That's a good one.
Euro, I guess.
I like the Vietnamese dong just because I.
Oh yeah,
just because I like saying.
We make a lot of dong jokes.
Just because I like paying for things in dongs. Yeah. We're at our hearts.
It's funnier every time.
We're at our hearts 8-year-olds. Yeah.
Yeah, we have the sense of humor of an 8-year-old boy, basically. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. First thing that comes to mind is when I say the word customs.
No.
Um,
I immediately think of American customs and I start shaking a bit.
Yeah.
So because of the fact that I was born in China and not Canada, every time I go into the States, I always get that big X on my ticket and I get dragged off to the side to search my purse. So the first thing that comes to mind is
Gotcha.
anxiety.
Okay.
For me anyway.
Yeah. I could say the same thing. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Okay.
Neither of us are really coffee drinking people.
Although in Vietnam, that's a bit different. Yeah, they have
Vietnam is
big
really interesting
coffee culture here.
because they have this coffee with like an Asian influence. Like they'll have like coffee with like coconut milk, or they'll have coffee with like
egg coffee
with egg in
That's
it.
very
Like
cool.
they actually take like egg yolk because like
Yes.
during the war they didn't have a lot of like cream, and as a result, but they had a lot of eggs.
Yeah.
For some strange reason. So they use egg yolk and then they beat it into the coffee and use it as a whitener. So it kind of tastes like tiramisu with a coffee kind of twist underneath it. It's really good. I highly recommend. I don't know if you could find it in Canada because I've never seen it. But then again, I didn't even know where to look for that. But now when I go back, I'm going to look for it. But Vietnamese egg coffee, highly recommend.
Wow. Okay. That actually, at first thought, I was like, huh. And then as soon as you beat it in there until I was like, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Like that.
Yeah.
Okay. First thing that comes to mind when I say Warren Buffett.
Oh.
He's a smart cookie, that one.
Yeah, he's definitely a smart cookie.
Yeah.
Right. That's like
He's,
that's
He
like
knows what
5
he's
words,
doing.
but that's fine. That's fine. Elon Musk.
I just immediately thought of Twitter. Twitter.
I had a lot of
Twitter.
words to describe him before this whole Twitter thing, and then now a lot of words to describe him after it.
It's
And
funny
they're
that
very different, and I probably shouldn't say it because he's probably listening right
and
now.
we thought about Twitter instead of the car, right? Which was really interesting.
Yeah.
That's now the thing that's associated with, not Tesla. Like what?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey for his PR people.
That it has. Okay, first thing that comes to mind when I say Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Muscles, sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, and last one. Is there such thing as a bad question?
Nope, never.
No. All questions.
All
questions are good.
All questions are equally valid.
Great. That's perfect. That's what I wanted to hear. That justifies my entire.
Ask away.
Ask away.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're on to our Q&A. So I'll hop into the comments here and see what some questions that people are asking and just pose them to you. I apologize to everybody if I mispronounce your names, but I have Rakesh wonders, buy a $400K house or rent for $2,500 per month at Dallas.
At what?
In Dallas?
At Dallas. I don't know.
I think that
in Dallas, maybe?
In Dallas, the city?
In Dallas.
I'm assuming so. Capital D.
Okay, so $250K.
$2,500 a month is actually pretty expensive considering a $400,000 house. So $2,500. I'm just going to start calculating. It's about $30,000. Is $30,000 in rent.
Yeah, a year.
I don't know. So
Dallas, Texas. Rakesh is Dallas, Texas.
What are the ratios that we use again for figuring out whether it's a good?
Yeah, we generally only buy if the rent is about 1%, like the yearly rent is like 1% of the cost of the house.
Yeah, so at $2,500 it would be $250,000. That would justify kind of a $250,000 purchase.
Yeah.
So it's like that's a ratio that the real estate investors use, where they kind of look to see whether it's a certain house would justify,
give you like a 10% return.
Would justify like owning a house to try to rent it out. So at that ratio, the answer would kind of still say no, because I would say so a real estate investor. So this kind of came from real estate investors like Paula Pant and other bloggers like that. So if I was looking at this decision of saying, should I put $250,000 down, knowing that I can rent it out for $2,500 a month, I would still, if the price was $400,000, I would still kind of say I would want to get that buy price down.
Yeah, I would try to look for $250,000 if possible.
Yeah, because otherwise 7.5% return on equity. It's like it's okay. I can get that on passively with over the long term in the stock market portfolio. So even that one I would kind of say I'd still rent on that one.
Okay, your stream was breaking up a little bit, but I think that the whole big picture there was kind of covered. So Mamdou asks, where do dividend ETFs fall in your portfolio?
So dividend ETFs are kind of like a hybrid between fixed income and equity. What we're using right now is a preferred share index, which is even more of a hybrid. So we kind of treat that as like half fixed income, half equity, because it is like they are shares, but they're not like common shares. So right now we're invested in like a 25%, so 75% equity divided evenly between Canadian, US, and international, with 25% of that as a preferred share index. This is more risky than a normal bond index, but again, that's something that we're okay with, and we kind of treat that as if it's a 90-10, like 90 equity, 10% fixed income, because again, we
can afford to take more risk.
Preferred shares are kind of like in the middle of it. But if you were, for example, getting a more traditional dividend ETF, which is kind of like, for example, a dividend aristocrats ETF or something like that, which really just invests in equity, like a section of the index that just pays more equity, then that should just be treated as straight equity, because that it is what it is equity, right? So if it's a dividend equity ETF, that should just be treated as equity straight. Preferred shares, which is more of a hybrid vehicle, we're kind of treating as like half equity, half fixed income.
Gotcha. Okay. Marta asks, is your investment workshop with its recommendations still current, given it was written in 2016? Is that?
Yeah, I think so. The ETF choices are still solid. I mean,
we have updated the allocation because, as we said before, we are dividend fire now, so we can afford to take more risk. So it's not 60-40 anymore; it's 90-10. But the workshop was always based on what you feel comfortable as an allocation. You don't have to do exactly what we're doing because our situations are different. And we also update regularly, like we do a yearly update about our finances and our portfolio. So we always show you exactly which ETFs we own now and what our new allocation is. So be sure to always look up, look at the updated information based on what we've changed our allocation to.
That being said, you have to remember that what we wrote the investment workshop targeting people who are just starting out or still in the accumulation phase. Mm-hmm. We're not there anymore because we are retired, and we've been retired for 8 years now, and depending on dividend income to survive. So the ETFs that I recommended back then, they're still solid. I mean, like they're all Vanguard or iShares ETFs that track the various indexes. Even if there are better, like newer ETFs that have come out, like for example, BMO has come out with some pretty good ETFs that are quite good. And even if you pick that one versus the ones that we recommended, the iShares one, like they all track the same indexes, and they're basically going to do the same thing. So the advice is still solid. The asset allocation is still solid. If there are better ETFs out there, that's fine. But whether you pick the ones that we picked back then versus the ones that are now available, they're all just kind of going to be like very, very minor differences. Like instead of a 0.03, it'll be a 0.02 kind of MER and that kind of thing. So it won't have much of a material difference to your overall portfolio performance.
Gotcha. Cool. Kurt asks, any thoughts on Canada rolling out the FHSA tax-free first home savings account?
Yeah, I was going to do a write-up on the FHSA, like literally this week, but then
Perfect, Kurt. Great question.
But then the SVB bank collapse happened, and I figured that people are going to be a lot more interested in hearing about that. Right. Like, are we all screwed? Which is what I named the article. The FHSA. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I mean, like it has, despite the fact that it's a investment vehicle meant to help people towards home ownership, which is a good thing. But if the Canadian government was trying to bring down the cost of homes, this is just going to make it worse because it's going to give people more incentive to jump into the housing market. That being said, even if you
decide not to buy
a house, the FHSA has the advantages of the RSP, meaning that you can put money into it and it's tax deductible. And then if you later on decide not to buy a house, you can then take those tax deducted funds and just roll it into an RSP, is my understanding. So what it basically means is it gives everybody like I think $8,000 or $9,000 of RSP room, like additional room. So there really is no reason not to do it, and it's especially even more helpful if you work in a company like like a bank or a government or something like that gives you a defined benefit pension, because defined benefit pensions have this it eats up your RSP contribution room. So if you have a defined benefit pension, great, but that also means that you can't invest inside an RSP. And FHSA doesn't have that, so it allows you to invest. So it allows you to invest an additional $8,000 per year, I think. And I can't remember whether it's $8,000 or $9,000, but I have to look that up again. But it gives you that flat rate that's not even dependent on your income. So it's for everybody except maybe like us, because we no longer need to put money into RSP. We're actually trying to take money out of RSP. But for everybody else, that an RSP would normally make sense, and FHSA makes a lot of sense too. So it's like there really is no downside to using it.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to throw up quickly on here on the screen, just so everybody knows, everyone who's in this chat, for 48 hours, you can get Passiv Elite for free for your first year if you use the referral code below. Attached in there. We should throw that into the comment section as well, so that everyone can kind of click through there. Now, Questrade is free Questrade is free. No, it's not. Passiv Elite is free if you are with Questrade. So for everybody else, with this referral code, you can redeem it when opening a passive account, and you will get your first year Passiv Elite for free. So it has all of our premium features, one-click trading, the whole thing. So we will drop that in the chat in just a second here. And in the meantime, let me just feed you another question here and see what some of our people are asking, because they are coming in fast and furious. So we got a question from Jeannie. She actually did another kind of math question here. So $77,000 left to pay on mortgage, just refinanced at 5.54%. Could pay off in 3 years, or should I invest the money instead?
Yeah, so our general rule of thumb is if the mortgage interest rate is higher than 4%, then you're probably not going to get the return in the stock market. So it's better to pay off your mortgage.
Or, after tax, like it's a 4% guaranteed return versus the stock market, which is like historically like 6 to 8%, but it does go up and down. So I mean, like last year was negative. This year, I'm not sure either. So if I think it was like 5%, a 5% mortgage rate, she said
5.5.
5.5. Yeah,
I would pay that.
I'd pay that down first. I'd pay that down first, to be honest.
Okay. We got a question from. I'm trying to scan through these. Jessica asks, do you change the ETF if the MER of another ETF are cheaper? Examples is iShares / Vanguard.
If they're like if it's unless it's like materially cheaper, but the thing is, when you swap out of a long-standing ETF that you've had, there might be like tax. You might take a tax hit for it.
Yeah.
So unless it's in your tax shelter.
So an example of this is like VTI has a much which is the Vanguard total stock index that covers the US index. I've been working that for many, many years, but because I invested way back in 2012, when I hadn't heard about that fund before, I was using a fund called SPY, which is the SPDR. It's S&P 500 ETF. It's one of the oldest ETFs in the US, but it was the fee structure was not as good as VTI. So for the longest time, I was like, oh, great, I'm in the wrong one, right? But in order to move from one to the other, I would have had to sell everything, take a capital gains hit, and then in order to move it over, especially in my non-registered account, which is where all my funds were. And then it was during 2020 when everything went like that really sharp drop in like April or May in 2020, when everything was underwater. And briefly, for a brief period of time, that SPY ETF, there were no capital gains, and I knew it was temporary, right? So at that point, I went, "This is my chance," and then I swapped everything over, and then everything came back up again, right? So, don't worry about it if you're in the wrong one and there's a more efficient one, because usually the difference in fees won't be as much as the tax that you have to pay for it. But if there's an opportunity and you're not sitting on a huge capital gain, yeah, sure, why not?
Or if it's your sheltered account.
Or if it's a sheltered account, there's no reason not to.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Madhu asks, do you guys suggest all-inclusive index ETFs like XEQT or VAB instead of 5 ETF model portfolio that you guys have in the workshop? Especially, go on.
Yeah. So this is another thing that Passiv does really well, where I don't like those all-in-one ETFs, because what those all-in-one ETFs do is it basically they will just own the 5 ETFs underneath the hood and then charge you a fee for it. So for example, Tangerine, actually not just even picking on any individual bank, because every bank creates these like comfort portfolios or these kind of like all-in-one funds. But if you look inside an index ETF, for example, and you look inside the prospectus where it tells you here are all the companies that we own, there's going to be like hundreds or thousands of them. It's basically impossible for you to actually replicate that on your own. But if you look at an all-in-one fund, there's really only going to be 3 or 4 funds inside of it, and they'll tell you exactly how much of each they own. So you can just copy that. So I wrote an article that I think I featured on Passiv's newsletter about how you can steal the allocation from an ETF fund. So what you can do with that is you can take any all-in-one fund that you want, open up its perspective, and it shows a little pie chart that fund has. You can go into Passiv and then create what's called a model, right? And you can just and then you can just copy the percentages of each individual fund into and create a custom model for yourself inside Passiv, and then you can just use that and apply it to your entire portfolio. So that's a really handy feature that basically eliminates the need to ever invest in one of those things, because you've just taken 5 or 10 minutes and replicated what that fund does for free, and you get to save that fee forever. So that's kind of my answer to that.
Yeah, that's actually one of the features that a lot of our users love Passiv for, right? Is to just build their own index funds, basically like doing that. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I know it's very popular and a lot of people really enjoy using it. So I was just searching for that blog piece. I was going to throw it in the comments chat, but I want to make sure I get another question before I go back to look at it. So just let me do this really quick. Another question we have was from Marta again. Is there an advantage in funding a 401k instead of putting all the money into ETFs?
You would fund a 401k and then invest it inside of an ETF. So it's not one or the other, it's both. So 401k is the American version of our RRSP. So that's employer sponsored. It's the most popular retirement fund in the US. So you would put money in from your paycheck into your 401k, get a tax break for it, and then inside the 401k invested as in index ETFs as much as you can, because some 401ks restrict what you can invest in, but most of them will have some form of index fund, mutual fund, or ETF. So it's not either or, it's yes and.
Gotcha. Okay. I want to find the blog piece now that you mentioned it. I want to get in there, but there's so many people asking questions. I asks, which preferred shares ETF do you invest in and why? And thank you.
Right now it's ZPR, which is the BMO Laddered Preferred Share. It invests mostly in like Canadian banks and insurers, utilities, and that kind of stuff. At the time that I looked at it, it was giving me a dividend yield of 6%. And like in the past couple of days, as long as every other stock like index fund out there, except maybe like a bond fund, has been getting hammered, because everyone's basically thinking banks run, right? But let's get realistic here. What happened to SBC? SBC has nothing to do with Royal Bank or
SBC.
SVB.
Yeah.
Acronyms.
It doesn't matter because they no longer exist. Anyway, Silicon Valley Bank. I'm a jerk. Anyway, so right now there's like a lot of panic in the markets, because everyone's trying to look for who's going to fail next. But the Silicon Valley Bank failure is not the same like Lehman Brothers, where when Lehman Brothers failed in the U.S., U.S. regulators were caught with their pants down, and they basically didn't know what to do, and their only solution was to basically throw as much money as they could in the form of bank bailouts under a program at the time that was called the TARP, or Troubled Asset Release Program, under George W. Bush. Since then, that was 2008. And since then, it's been, what is that, like 15 years? And as you've noticed, the government's response to the Silicon Valley Bank failure has been a lot more rapid, because they know what to do now. And what we've noticed now, that when you run into a situation like this before, where we have seen it before, we know what to do, and collectively, and the downturns have become sharper and shorter, and the recoveries have come a lot faster. So that's kind of what I'm expecting to happen here. And even back then in 2008, when all these American banks were falling over, none of the Canadian banks fell over. So I'm expecting this kind of like run away from all banks all around the world to be a bit of an irrational response. What happened in California has nothing to do with like TD or CIBC or Royal Bank or BMO or anything like that. They have no exposure to the same kind of financial risks that that Silicon Valley Bank was. So right now, you might actually be able to get an even higher yield on preferred shares right now, because the price has gone down a bit. I kind of wish I had more money to throw into it right now, but I don't. So I'm just going to have to be happy with my 6% dividend yield, and after that, I just ignore the noise.
I just want to reiterate again, it's because we actually are retired and we actually need the yield. So when you're accumulating, again, you don't need that complexity. So one of the reasons we pick it is because we need the stable yield.
Just stick with the bond fund, because right now, as equities are kind of going down, bonds have shot up in value as well. So bonds have now resumed their normal stabilizing role inside of a balanced portfolio. Preferred shares are actually going in the same direction as equity markets. So we're actually experiencing more volatility than a normal 60-40 balanced portfolio would experience. So take that with a grain of salt, because just because this is what we're doing may not necessarily be appropriate for you, because your volatility tolerance is different from ours. Ours is a lot higher now.
And if you're accumulating, it's a different.
And if you're accumulating, then you don't need to. You basically don't need to do any of that stuff.
Right. Okay, one last question here, because we're near the top of the hour. You were just talking about the accumulating phase. So here's a question about the decumulation phase. So how do you minimize trading costs during your decumulation phase? This is from Danny.
So we basically do just like one set of rebalances every December/January, so somewhere around there. So we basically do that once a year. After that, during the year, we don't actually do a lot of trading, other than taking dividends that we received, and then maybe putting them into a money market fund. And then at the end of the year, we do like our harvesting, and we do all of our like reallocation, rebalancing, and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, we probably have like a dozen trades a year. That's not related to just like buying money market funds with our dividends. So that's kind of how we minimize our trading costs, by simply not trading all that much.
Right. Okay. So we're near the top of the hour. There's still questions and stuff coming through here. So we'll try to get a few of these questions answered offline after we're done here, but we do have a cutoff time. So I want to quickly throw up a link on here directing anyone. I know most people here know of your site, but I'll just throw a ticker along the bottom where people can actually go. Yeah, I know, right? This is just a link to your website, and specifically a page about tools and things that you recommend, one of which is Passiv. So people can head over there to see some of the things you recommend. And otherwise, I mean, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so great. I mean, we really appreciate your time. We really appreciate you guys have been passive users and huge fans of our product and really promoted us for years. And to that, we thank you so much. And And I want to thank you again for giving us your time and letting everybody here learn some of your knowledge.
Yeah, of the few things that we actually pack in our backpack, the Passiv t-shirt is one of them.
This thing is really comfortable, actually.
Yeah.
They sent it to us as like a Christmas gift one of these years, and it's this and our Mad Scientist t-shirt is one of the few like branded t-shirts that we still carry around the world with us. So yeah.
Great. Well, 5 lucky people who have been in this chat. We're going to pick at random, and we've got some Passiv shirts that we're going to try and give out. So hopefully we'll get in touch with 5 of you, and you'll be just like Bryce and Kristy, rocking a Passiv t-shirt in your well, not in the Canadian weather, I guess, but when the sun comes. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much. It's been really fun. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And I want to say thank you again, and have a good night and enjoy your time in Vietnam.
Let's do this again sometime.
All right. Thank you again. See you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye now.